Do you have any insight on how people can do a better job of finding good employees and retaining them?
We went through a spurt there with a massive turnover, and we're like, what the heck is happening? Having the ability, we've created an educational curriculum. So being able to invest in them and grow them and help them develop their skill sets to get them from one point to the next, and doing it at their pace and the way they want it done. And we've also learned too that we're looking for the needle in the haystack, trying to find that star performer. And we just do little things, company events. We have referral bonuses and things like that. But the biggest bang for the buck is really the first thing that we do. And when we violate it, we know it, but we look for a good cultural fit. And typically when we do a good job of that, it's not that hard to keep them because they like the culture, they like the environment, and that's been instrumental to us.
Welcome to the Spear and Clover podcast, the show where military mindset meets the spirit of the puppy. I'm your host, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and each week I bring you the stories of visionaries who see the world as it could be and can't help but take action. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and review. This is the best way to stay in the loop when we drop new content. Don't forget, the conversation continues in our brand new Spear and Clover community group. Check us out on Discord or follow the link in our bios to join this free group for entrepreneurs or wantrepreneurs. Hey, entrepreneurs, does any of this sound familiar? Have you hired only A players? Purchased the latest fire plays from so-called gurus, consistently almost become an elite organization, only to have it result in talented employees regressing to mediocrity, tactical plays spiking performance and then fading away quickly, managers losing discipline and hunger and then either leaving or just coasting? Do you really think the difference between you and the industry-leading team is a hire or a slick new marketing play? That's the same tired crap my Chicago Bears have shoved down my throat for over 30 years. Meanwhile, the Green Bay Packers have had two coaches in 50 years, they've had two quarterbacks for 20 years, and they're a contender every single year. Many leaders buy the best playbooks, draft the best talent, and hire the best coaches, and year after year return without trophies. Who could blame them? Most business coaches, consultants, and so-called gurus only sell tactical playbooks designed to provide a brief spike followed by a return to business as usual. The truth is, winning is simple. You need a clear North Star supported by managers and role players that have absolutely zero uncertainty about how they can help the team win today. Our simple program helps you become a dynasty organization from top to bottom. Dynasty Defined not only helps you structure a team that's capable of consistently winning championships, but once you do, they'll be writing their own playbooks, recruiting the best talent, and calling their own plays from the field. The choice is yours. Continue to hope that the next hire or brand new marketing play will finally solve all your problems, or commit to winning permanently, roll up your sleeves, and let's get started defining your dynasty. I am beyond proud to announce that we are now accepting applications for Dynasty Defined. Cohorts are limited to 6 entrepreneurs, and they fill up quickly, so head on over to www.spearandclover.com now and claim your spot. I can't wait to see you on the inside. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Spear and Clover podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jason Skisick, the entrepreneurial evangelist, and I'm joined today by somebody really interesting, Matt Caruso, owner of Decrascape. Matt, how are you, brother?
Great, man. How are you?
I'm super good, man. I'm excited about this conversation. It's something that I'm increasingly enjoying, and that is talking to entrepreneurs who aren't necessarily seeking out the spotlight, right? It's easy to find a sales guy who wants to talk about sales. It's easy to find a guy with a t-shirt company that wants to talk about that, or somebody that's out there, selling new widgets that wants to do that. But to talk to somebody who's just out there energizing a vision and really helping people's lives in a meaningful way and building teams is really exciting to me. So before I toot your horn too much, Matt, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say we create lifestyles for people. So we help to extend the indoors to the freedom of the outdoors. And we do that through creating custom spaces, outdoor living spaces, custom brick pavers, natural stone. Been at it for 33 years, and we do both on a commercial level and a residential level. So we have our largest project to date spanned 4 acres, quite well, approximately probably 4 football fields of pavers, and not to mention on top of a roof where they had an amphitheater on top of this roof. So done some pretty large, intricate stuff to your a front walkway for the entry of a home. Like a 20 by 3 walkway. So we go from one range of the spectrum to the other, and it's just kind of create. We like to say we inspire people through our creative process, end result, and total experience. So basically, just starting with that blank canvas and turning it into something pretty cool.
Oh, that's beautiful, man. I think too, even just you said it's pretty cool. It is beautiful. It's kind of an art, right? There's this thing that interior design knows and that your industry knows, and restaurant design or merchandising in stores is when you walk into a space, or in your case, out into a space in a backyard or wherever it may be, you can heavily influence the emotions, the feelings, or the connection of those people. Do you feel that way?
Oh man, absolutely. Just it depends on where you're at. The serenity or the tranquility of like a water feature or just a quiet space to sit and relax, or an outdoor living space in your backyard, pool, outdoor living room with barbecue and bar and the whole shot. It just changes the whole spectrum from people that love to entertain. It's really cool. And the memories, we like to say, we help people create memories, right? And whatever case that may be. And we like the fun ones, but we have all sorts, and it just changes the space. I like to say our vision that we constantly chase, our core purpose, is beautifying the world one landscape project at a time.
Oh, that's gorgeous, man. I'll never forget my grandfather, who's since passed on, lived a very long and full life. But he was in Northern Virginia, and he had a nice pool in his backyard in Northern Virginia, like right outside of DC. And he had an entire forest, and I'm talking a 1/4 acre, man, very small, an entire forest of bamboo in his backyard. And one of my most vivid memories as a kid is multiple times, just like kind of running through this bamboo forest, which seemed huge. And then when I went back as an adult, not that many years ago, seeing how small it was, but how immersive it could be. So how did you know this was something you wanted to do?
Yeah, well, I guess it's a great question. It's really kind of crazy. So I remember when you were just talking about that and creating things, it made me think of my grandmother's husband, and he was always doing little things, like he used tuna fish cans in the backyard to create a putt-putt course, and just all little things that he would do. So I used to take he was an Italian guy, right? He used to love to go to the fruit market, and he would get the grapes and he'd get them in the crates, and I'd start ripping those things down and trying to construct different things out of the crates. And when I was in high school, I used to build picnic tables out of my parents' garage and sell them, and just always loved creating or doing different things. And then I don't know, I led me down the road of after high school, I went into the military. So I was in the United States Army, 82nd Airborne Division. I did that for 3 short years. Probably the best move I ever made.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, so that's awesome. And after I did that, I came out. I was taking advantage of the GI Bill, going to school at night to get my accounting degree, and was a contract employee. Got hired in full time at DuPont, and it seemed like just a couple of weeks after I finally made the move and accepted that position, a buddy of mine called from high school and just said, "Hey man, we always talked about doing things. We were building the picnic tables, and you're out now, and I'm doing this cool stuff. I'm doing this brick paving stuff. How would you like to go into business doing that with me?" And I said, "Man, that sounds awesome." I was with DuPont, but naively enough, didn't realize back at the time what a big company that was. And I was in like a satellite location, like a little paint warehouse. So we were outfitting jobbers with paint and the little different automotive supplies. And I was like, man, these people are going to have to die before I can ever advance the chain in this company. I'm going to be stuck in this cubicle forever, right? That's what it looked like to me. So I was like to him, I was like, "Man, that sounds awesome. I'll put in my 2-week notice today. And if I can ask you one question before we're done here, that'd be great." He goes, "Yeah, man, shoot." I go, "What the hell is a brick paver?"
Oh, that's funny.
And that's about how I got started in it, honestly.
You know, it's funny. We must be pretty similar because my first real business was the gym, and I did it the same way. I mean, I knew what a gym was, obviously, but my
Right.
eventual partner called me up. I was on my way home from a camping trip where I'd been rock climbing all weekend, and he goes, "Hey, man, I've been looking around at CrossFit gyms, and they're all like $250. I'm going to school at the GI Bill and working at a job right now." And he was like, "Why don't we just start our own?" And I was like, "Yes." I literally was like, "Yes," because in my idiot brain. I was like, it's cheaper for me to start a CrossFit gym, which is of course many $1,000s a month, versus spending $225 or whatever the cost would have been. What was your job in the military? What were you doing when you were in there?
I was actually in the well, I was the first, the 508th, and then we converted over to the third, the 505. I was in a parachute infantry regiment, so I was in the
Wow.
infantry battalion.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's pretty tough and pretty rigid and pretty
Throw,
cool. So
throwing you out of perfectly good airplanes, huh?
yeah, they say you
Yeah.
gotta be a little insane to do something like that. I never equated to it. It was my scariest jump actually was my second jump because I had no freaking idea what I was getting myself into on the first one. So
Yeah.
uh, it
Yeah.
was pretty cool stuff. That was a rush. I'll tell you that.
You know, I never jumped out of a plane, but one thing I did do was in the ROTC, which first of all, I did the ROTC before the army and then I enlisted. So that shows you how smart I am. But I did the ROTC, and just for those people listening at home, ROTC is like a path to coming as an officer, which is like management in the army, right? Um, One of the things they did, this was at Northern Illinois University, is they have that giant stadium like most D1 schools do. And the ROTC would hoof us up to the top of that thing, and we'd have to rappel off of the
Oh,
stadium, which is overhanging. So there's just nothing there. And so it's equivalent to like air assault, which is how you rappel out of a helicopter. And that was maybe the scariest thing I've ever done. Because at the time I ended up being a rock climber, but I had never done that before. And they were basically just like, here's how you do it. Now go. And it was super scary. But I can only imagine what that airborne jumps with those must have felt like.
yeah. Yeah, the crazy ones where you were practicing to be combat ready, and they would have you, you do you want your reserve? And I'm like, well, hell yeah, I want my reserve. What do you mean? And they were like, well, if you end up needing it, you're jumping at such a low altitude, it won't have enough time to deploy anyway. So if you want it for psychological purposes, yeah, take it. And I'm like, I'll take it.
Yes. Also, don't tell me that. Just give it to me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Um,
songs they would play about you splatting on the ground and
yeah.
all that stuff. It's like, psychologically intense.
And I think there's probably some very good reasoning behind that, right?
Oh
I'm
yeah.
very familiar with some of those songs and some of those, chants and things like that that you do while you're in there. It's the old, I think the older you get, and I think this is a very human thing, but the older you get, the more you realize, exactly what it takes to send young men and women into battle like that, and exactly what it takes to get them prepared to walk into those, scenarios. Um, I've spent a lot of time lately thinking about I don't want to say blue collar, but like very real businesses like yours,
Yeah.
and really have made some very fast friends that will probably be enduring, that are very much involved in what I would call like real businesses that are on the ground at people's homes, in companies, that are out on the streets. What do you think the difference is as an entrepreneur, leading people like you do, teams that are out there moving dirt and stone and things like that, versus somebody who maybe is working with a team out of an office? Have you given much thought to that at all?
Honestly, I haven't. I would imagine the same holds true, right? With leadership and style, you got to take an interest in them before they'll ever take an interest in you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really, to me, I guess my three premises are, maybe I stole this a little bit from the military, but it's like, I know, number one, and most importantly, I act like a coach. Number two, when I need to be, and there are times when you need to be, I got to put the drill sergeant hat on.
Yep.
And then third, and the most important one is, you're a shrink, right? And that's the hardest thing I think about leading people. I can't talk to you the same way I can talk to Bob or Tim or Carla. Everybody requires a different touch and a different feel. So I don't know that there's really much of a difference, because I did spend a lot of time in the field originally. When I first started, I was, installing it, selling it, doing the books, the whole enchilada, right? And then as I gradually, started to grow the business, then I became inside, and then I was the business development manager. And I found that leading that team wasn't different than leading the team outside. Give them what they need, spend the necessary time with them, give them the tools and the support that they need to do the very best that they can. When I do think back of some of the things that I had, like even at DuPont, they pretty much throw you to the wolves and you go do your thing. But when I try, and I didn't have a long career, I guess, working for somebody else, but I when I was there, you weren't getting that hand holding or that coaching or that grooming or where are you going? And I'm always one that's trying to climb the ladder. That's how I'm wired. I can't tell you how many people I probably worked out of the business because honestly, I thought everybody thought that way. Like, what's the
Right.
next rung? What's the next rung? And, some people are perfectly fine pushing the wheelbarrow. And it just didn't sit well with me. So my screw ups in the beginning were probably trying to move that guy up the chain, or the best team leader I had trying to make him a supervisor. So I learned very different things of doing that. But I don't know that I ever really thought about it in relation to exterior work versus interior leading teams. However, I would say that there's got to be a lot of similarities from what I've experienced myself anyway.
Yeah, and I don't talk about it much just because it doesn't come up in the run of the show, but I've owned a moving company. I've owned a company that, managed a bunch of people installing furniture out in the field. I've certainly spent a ton of my life digging holes in the back in the desert, and then also in the backyard of my house. My dad's a plumber, and we would always do all of our own landscaping. So I've moved probably 200 people in the city of Chicago at some point or another as the owner of a CrossFit gym who owned a box truck. And so because of that, I get what you're saying. I wonder if part of it too, though, is like in the white collar job, let's say somebody, they think that the college degree is the thing that prepares them to walk in and do it. And so they go, well, here you go, kid, now go do this thing. Whereas potentially, you bring somebody in, they're just a raw material. You got to teach them how to use first a shovel or a pickaxe, then it's going to be a wheelbarrow, then it's going to be a backhoe or whatever that process may be.
Right, exactly.
Speaking of that, what types of systems, you don't have to go into super detail, but like what type of systems are the things that make your business run?
Yeah. So, well, cool things like technological advances or whatever. The first thing that comes to mind is like we have a actual mechanical layer where I can lay brick. So if you can picture a pallet of brick, which is maybe 6 to 9 rows tall, so it's like a 3x3, and it goes down 6 or 9 layers. This thing comes up kind of like the Bobcats, but it's got an arm and it comes up and it takes the whole top layer of the pallet off, and you can lay that at one time. So whatever that is, roughly 90 bricks in a layer, that really truly becomes one brick. And we can mechanically put that stuff down. So we've done big parking lots and things like that. But one guy, button the seat, everything's prepared, and all he's got to do is lay. You can put down about 80 pallets a day on average in a machine like that. I was like, man, where was that thing when I was busting my back in the field outdoors, right? So there's cool stuff like that. And then years ago, I created a pretty elaborate estimating system in Excel. And then I got this crazy harebrained idea, as entrepreneurs tend to do, that I'm going to go create, a software program out of it. So my team, unfortunately, let me divert left and start working on that. And I quickly learned that I'm not a software guy for a reason or a developer for a reason, but I wish I would have stuck with it, because some of the greatest technology that we have today is our estimating softwares and different things along those lines that tie everything together. And we do our estimating, our job cost tracking, our time tracking for the guys in the field, our inventory, the whole shot. And it's really cool, and it's integrated and brought everything together. But I can't lie, at times I do kick myself and say, man, why didn't I stick with that? Why did I let people talk me out of it? Because it's a lucrative business.
Yeah, it may be. I'm sure it is. It's software as a service, right? But
Right.
I'll tell you what, ChatGPT is not about to replace the bricklayers. AI is about to replace those software folks, and I'm of course kidding. But speaking of which, are you capable, like, are you able to identify, like, what does a good employee look for, like, for you, like when you're out there? Because I think there's no secret that the number one, or maybe it's not a secret, but in my opinion, the number one problem that employers across the board, from very top to very bottom, are dealing with right now isn't sales, and it's not marketing, and it's not supply chain is something, but it's finding employees that'll stay, they're going to do the work, they're going to be engaged, and they're going to stay and actually add value to the company for a meaningful amount of time. Your industry seems to have been hit particularly hard with this, where folks are not showing up to work or don't want to do it. Are you capable? Do you have any insight on how people can do a better job of finding good employees and retaining them?
Yeah, because it's really crazy in our industry too, and I'm sure it's across the board to some extent, right? But the trades are pretty denigrated,
Mm-hmm.
and just took for what we do to the skill level, and it's like holy smokes, we went through a spurt there with a massive turnover, like the highest turnover we've ever had in our company's history, which is like, and we're like, what the heck is happening?
Mm-hmm.
So having the ability, we've created an educational curriculum, so being able to invest in them and grow them and help them develop their skill sets, so investing a lot of time in them to get them from one point to the next, and doing it at their pace and the way they want it done. So we found that that's very helpful. And we've also learned too that we're looking for the needle in the haystack, trying to find that star performer, which usually ends up like you've inserted a terrorist inside your organization when you do find them,
Mm-hmm.
because they just don't fit the culture well. But and we just do little things, probably the normal things, but company events, we have referral bonuses and things like that. But the biggest bang for the buck is really the first and ever thing that we do. And when we violate it, we know it, but we look for a good cultural fit. You have to fit who we are, what we look like, and where we're going. And typically, when we do a good job of that, it's not that hard to keep them, because they like the culture, they like the environment, and we go. The hard part too is like, I wish I was closer to like maybe pig farm territory or farmers or whatever, people that grew up accustomed to hard labor. What we do is not easy, and there's a lot of technological advancements, but you're still digging dirt, right? And there's a lot of handwork, and you're humping bricks and blocks, and so, some of the product we carry around now is well over 100 pounds per block and things like that. So giving them the best tools to do the job and taking good care of them, and taking an interest in them, and that's been instrumental to us. And it's I can't remember there was a guy we were actually interviewing to come in to be our field operations manager, and it was funny when I heard him say it. He's like, what I've learned is you can't treat people the way you used to be able to treat them in our type of an industry. And I remembered those job sites. You'd hear these, it was mostly carpenters, but just the way they yelled and hollered and screamed at their people. And I'm like, man, I would never work for somebody like that. So just treat people the way they want to be treated. The golden rule everybody says is treat people the way you want to be treated. I don't know that the way I want to be treated is the way you want to be treated. So I want to learn more about you and treat you the way you want to be treated. And let's make a go of this. And we found it to be very good. And we're experiencing some success, knock on wood, because labor is tough. And where we're looking to go as a business, we need to double it.
Yeah, and it's funny because my dad, like I said before, my dad's a plumber, and I mean he's been in fist fights since I was an adult. I'm talking like in his probably 40s, he's gotten into fist fights on a job site somewhere, and it's hard to wrap my head around that as somebody who worked at banks and even have done the things that I've done. But it's interesting. One thing that helped me was when my wife Donna became a full-time employee at the gym. I gave her a special set of not rules, but like I looked at her employment differently. I said, I want her to stay forever. I want to be married to her forever. And so I need to look at these like stumbling blocks, these hurdles in the road as pebbles. I need to look way out on the horizon and view these interactions as not a big deal. And then once that worked, I looked at it and I went, wait a second. How come I'm not doing that with everybody? That shouldn't, why am I treating her different? Like I need to treat everybody that way. And that really was a meaningful moment or meaningful time in my life of like just realizing that I would love, now of course I'm not married to all of my employees and certainly they can be fired or whatever, but it definitely gave me a lot more empathy and a lot more just a different perspective on how to lead primarily with carrot. And I think in this environment, the carrot is far more valuable than the stick.
Yeah, I agree. And it's kind of funny listening to you talk like that. My wife Shannon's very heavily involved in our business, and
Yeah.
we've became grandparents. So I have a 3-year-old granddaughter and a 1-year-old grandson. So it's a new chapter.
Wow.
And
Wow.
she's starting to scale back a little bit, but it's really kind of cool that you say that, because it's very similar for me. I'm a very dominant kind of guy, very direct. And I don't like, I remember even in our relationship, she'd be like, "Oh my God, what a jerk you're being." And I'm like, what did I say? And to her, like, I was just being direct and straightforward. She's the type of gal that you cut yourself, she feels your pain. I'm
Hmm.
like, put a band-aid on it.
Hmm.
But for her, being in the role that she sat in, and the things that she would do and the connections she would make with the team members, and you if you had a baby, buy you a nice gift and or whatever, and make a big deal out of it. And she does like opening day for the Detroit Tigers here, and just different things, and she's brought a nice little touch to it, and that touch has been so cool. And it's kind of bittersweet that she's starting to scale a little bit back out of the business, that I'm going, holy smokes, man, that's going to be some big shoes to fill. But one thing that she really said to me, because I'm hard charging, check the box, what's next? And sometimes you do, miss or look over some empathy and compassion, because you're always just hard charging and moving. And she would be like, you got to take time to celebrate the successes and share that with the team. They need that. So that was cool. But I do some consulting work, and she said, she goes, "Are you like that with your consulting clients? I would think that you would put your consulting hat on and act that same way underneath our
Hmm.
hood." And I'm like, wow, that's a novel idea, right? It's like, so true. So it's just been great. And she's just her little, inputs and comments and just suggestions. She keeps me grounded, and it's been very instrumental. And I think honestly, it's helped a lot with the team that we do have in place. We have some long tenured team players, 20 plus years. We've been around for 33, and we've had a couple that have pretty much been here, for the whole ride. And I honestly attribute a lot of that to her.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I think just to toot your horn a little bit, like you recognizing that with your nature says so much about who you are, right? I think there's a famous saying of it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
only really say that to say I have so much respect for the warriors who are capable of being at home in a garden, for those
Yeah.
folks that are capable of being a weapon in a literal sense, or even just like tough to deal with or whatever,
Right.
that can also say like, hey, it's time to paint my fingernails with my granddaughter or whatever it may be, or just
Right.
recognize when somebody's right. I think the other thing too that you said in there that I thought was valuable was the consulting hat versus the management hat versus potentially the husband hat. And it's like I think everybody would do better to treat to be a little more tough in their sales meetings and not just be walked all over, and a little more friendly and likable in their on the ground, boots on the ground meetings. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
uh
Right.
yeah, I think probably if we could, if you could, I think ideally we're just who we are all the time, but who we are is good in every scenario, right?
Yeah. And I've been pretty blessed with people that I've been around, and I'm very open to learning. But I got to tell you, years ago, I'd be like, "What are you, crazy? What do you mean I got to change? This is how I got to where I'm at today." And so I think there's a little age in there, right? And a little experience, but I've been very receptive of that and invested a lot in myself to get better and to change, because for myself, for my family, for the business. And, and before it was always, I was in control of everything, and now the organization's getting bigger. You can't keep your arms around it all. And it's
Mhm.
really become more about the who you bring into your company, and not how am I going to get it done and what can I control, right? So it's been in the EOS world, right? They call it letting go of the vine, the
Mhm.
entrepreneurial operating system, right? Kind of with Gino Wickman. Sure, you're probably familiar with all that, right?
Very,
And
yeah.
just letting go of the vine. And that's been very difficult for me to let go of the vine, because it's a little bit scary, right? This is my baby and this is what I've built. But it's amazing the leaps and bounds the business has taken from the power of the team that I would have never been able to do by myself. And it's just really cool to see it come together. And man, when you give people autonomy to do it the way they want to do it, within the parameters, of course, of how we operate as a business, it's been so cool to watch them flourish and to watch the positive effect that they have on the business. And don't get me wrong, there's negative effects too, right? They make mistakes, but if I had to kick the person most responsible for where I'm at today, I probably wouldn't be able to sit for a month, right? So, I got to let other people fail too.
Yeah.
So
Let's
very
linger on
similar.
that. Let's linger on that for just a minute though. So talk to me about, because it's interesting to me. I think that it's easy to think about it in different terms, but it's probably not that different. As somebody running a company of you know real world employees out there digging holes and moving dirt and moving stone and things like that, it's easy for me to imagine that 5 years in, Matt feels like he's got it figured out. I don't know what the revenue's like at that point, but I'm sure it's a shadow of what it is today. How do you, having feel like you've checked all the boxes and solved all the problems, what was the catalyst that made you reach for more? Because I think you probably could have been satisfied after about 5 years, if I'm guessing.
Yeah. No, and it's very true. And it's kind of funny that you say that because about, I don't know, it was 5 to 8 years in, I
Yeah.
went to this conference and they have this thing where you can get certified. You're a certified concrete paver installer. And I said, yeah, let's go do this. Right. So I went to go do that. And I'm like reading the book and I'm like, wow, what the heck is this? And wow, there's a sieve analysis and the soil types and what's maximum proctor what, and all this stuff. And I go, man, I don't know nowhere anywhere near what I thought I knew. And so that became like the driving force. Thankfully, I passed the exam, got certified and all that. But it's just kind of been that driving force once I saw that, and to be, wow, how foolhardy is that to think you have it all figured out. And just to kind of bring it to the next step. I read something in a book once that said, it doesn't matter how many followers you have. It really lends itself to see what kind of a leader you are by how many leaders you have produced and how
Mm.
many leaders they themselves have produced, right? So that's like has always been like the driving force for me. And like again, I'm a check the box. Okay, we hit that milestone. What's the next one? So
Have there been businesses that have come out of your business?
like from like people that have left and started their
Yeah.
own
Have there
type of
been
thing.
people that leave and start their own thing? How do
Yes,
you
there
feel about
has.
that?
Back in the day, I was bitter. I'm like, what the heck, right? But now who I am and where I'm going, I'm like, well, we hate to lose you, but hey, if you need some help, man, let me know where and how I can help you,
Yeah.
right? And when I think about it, because before I used to kind of put my arms around everything, and it's like, really, there's really no trade secrets to what we do. We dig ditches, we put in base, we lay some pavers, right? And it's like I don't know. So anymore, I take pride in giving them what I can give them, and my intent is that they stay because you hate to lose that. And now they're your competition, but I believe we have some unique differentiators that separate us. So and to catch up to where we're at today too. And I'd be foolhardy not to help them. All the years they've invested in the blood, sweat, and tears they put into helping me fulfill my vision and my dream.
Mhm.
I think you owe it to reciprocate, right?
It's hard. It's hard, isn't it? I mean, even to hear you say that, my words that I think about my own versions of this are coming out of your mouth. And I've heard it out of other men and women's mouths that have been in the same seat as you're in right now. And so it's one of those things where it's hard to not take these things personally. It's hard not to, because we're the hero of our own story, but we have to realize that somebody else is the hero of their story. And it's not somebody's role to live in our shadow. Right. And that's
Yeah.
something that I try to remind myself. And for those folks that are doing it, I've had conversations with my employees like, hey, when the time comes and you want to step out and do a thing, let me help you. And I admire that when people are able to get to that point, because I think it can only come from a position of strength and understanding.
Yeah, and it's also too back to like your previous question. It's also the driver in me too. Like I'm going, okay, I figured it out, and we're in a great place. However, I've got some great people on board too, right? So, and they're hungry, and if I'm not continually fueling their fire to challenge themselves and to help them grow, you become stagnant, right? If you're not growing, you're dying, and
Yeah.
that's kind of how I look at it anyway. But so also, I've learned too, like, what did I miss? Like, what weren't they seeing here, or how that weren't they fulfilled, where maybe I could have changed the way they were looking at things by just giving them more opportunity or ownership in some way, shape, or form. And some people are destined to do their own thing and leave, and that's fine too. But the older me and the more refined and a little bit wiser, I would like to believe, I'm like, let me pour into you.
There's nothing more dangerous than a focused man who's focused on growth, focusing on one thing for 33 years? What is the recipe for that happening? How did you not get diverted? How did you not get a taste of money and find complacency? Is it a pursuit of excellence? Is it showing up and punching the clock? Is it the experiences you give for your clients? Is it the team that's paying their mortgage and putting their kids in school through what you're giving them? Is there something that you hold on to? What's in the corner of the mirror of your bathroom mirror? Like, what is the thing that you look up at when it's 4:45 in the morning and you got to get your ass in gear, you know?
Yeah, man, that's a great question. It really is. And I think that I don't know if I could tie it all to one thing. First thing that came to mind was never quit.
Yeah.
I've been burnt out and beat up, and it's like, what the hell am I doing? Man, this is crazy. Why don't I just go work for somebody? Probably make more money, right? At one point in my life, I probably could have made more money flipping burgers at McDonald's than what I was doing. So it's a
Yeah.
never quit. But then you said something else too, and I remember one of my longest tenured guys when he first came here. He didn't speak a lick of English. He had somewhat like myself, had no idea what a brick paver was, and he's he is, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, he is the best guy we have out in the field. And now he's grown into a position where he's a project manager leading others and building and developing other people. Man, how cool is that?
Yeah, shows up in that F-250 Super Duty. Yeah, I know I know that guy. I know that guy.
Right. And
Yeah.
I just think that that's so cool, and the impact. And so one of the things that I used to look at is like, I would be like, what's my why? Why am I doing this or whatever? And then I've come to terms with, I don't believe my personal vision is to encourage, nurture, and facilitate personal growth in others. And I do that at home. I do that in my business. I do that in my consulting world. And thankfully I have a vehicle. Decrescape, right, is one of those vehicles of which it allows me to play in that world doing that, or it allows me to play in the world of personally encouraging, nurturing, and facilitating personal growth in others. So I look at my business as a vehicle to allow me to chase the other passions in my life.
That's beautiful, man. And so when you put it down, when it's all said and done, what is the legacy that you hope to leave behind, whether it's in the business or just on the world?
Impacting the well-being of lives, right? And it's like, it's amazing, like how big this place is and how much we don't know, right? It's like, I think, I'm so mired in all my own little world here of all this stuff I have to learn and know and grow, and then all the cool stuff that I've yet to see and touch and things like that, and just providing people with the ability to experience those things and get after it, get some, and just go do it. And it's kind of funny. I always thought that maybe one day my kids would be in the business. I have three kids. I have a 30-year-old daughter, a 28-year-old daughter, and a 25-year-old son. And for the longest time, none of them had any interest in the business. And that was somewhat by design. I'm like, this is my passion, my dream, go do your own thing, cut your teeth, whatever. And then if you decide after you've tried it out in the real world that you want to come back and maybe try this out, it's here for you. But I didn't want it to be like that. And my middle daughter has actually come to work here for us, and she's our client experience specialist. And I'm going, wow, how cool is that? I'm going, how are we going to ever replace my wife? And I'm going, there's that smile, there's that common sense, there's that people person. And I'm going,
That's great.
So it's just kind of so cool to see that and the cool things that she's doing here. I don't know that she'll ever have the drive to take the place over, but I would hate to see that, whatever it is, 30, 40, 50 years of doing this, I would hate to see this thing just, let's shut the doors and close it down because I'm leaving. I want this thing to be stabilized and sustained, to continue to grow and live and grow exponentially without me.
Yeah, I think that's the middle market conundrum, right? Like
Right.
we're a little too small to be, a publicly traded company that's, talked about on the news, and we're a little bit too big to necessarily be just like passed down to maybe somebody in the family. And so you have this I was a commercial banker for a little while, so this is something I think about a little bit. And so you have this weird like filter. You have to like make it through the private equity thing in order to make it to the other side of that, and it's a mess, man. But I won't mire too long in there. So that's fascinating, man. I'm so happy to hear. There's so many super interesting things there. I'm sure we could talk about it all day. Um, what's some advice that you would give to a young man or woman who has a skill, whether it's a trade, whether it's a, blue or white collar, doesn't matter. They have a skill, they can do a thing, and they think that they want to start a company. What would you tell that person?
Another great question. One of my adages that I like to say is it's about the significant few and not the important many. So, there's so many times I see it where even myself, right, just trying to work on everything, so so if you're starting off and you're going to do your thing, I don't care if I opened up my wife always talks about, man, why don't you just open up a smoothie stand and offer 3 flavors? This would be so much easier, but even if I did take what that easier route is, I would still create a plan. What's the plan? When it's all said and done, what are we holding? Know where it is where you're going, right? So you're just not wandering around aimlessly. For so many years, I was just busting my hump. We're seasonal, right? And we can only work 8-9 months out of the year. If I was to move and show you outside my window, all my trucks and equipment are covered in snow, can't do anything. So come like October, November, I'm beating the street. I was doing finished carpentry, tile, foundations, you name it, to keep myself busy through the winter. And I was just in this rat race, and I never really thought about what I wanted my business to be. So the first thing that I would do, that's great. You have this. Don't be. I think it was Michael Gerber that said, right, and a technician suffering from an entrepreneurial seizure, right? So
Right. Yeah.
you're right. Think through who you want to become and where you want to go. And I know that might be hard right out of the gate, but put together some kind of a plan and direction of where you wanted to go. Because in most cases, and this as well as I do, most of those businesses don't get past 5 years if they're lucky, And so really think through what you want to do and focus on the significant few things and not the important many.
I agree. And I'm going to call you on the spot here. I'm going to challenge you a little bit here, Matt, because I'm going to ask you to be a representative for an entire industry. So just know ahead of time, to the listener and to you, Matt, that I don't even live in the same state as Matt. I have no experience with his company, and I have nothing but great things that I've heard about his company. But I will ask you this: how come I can't get anybody to show up on my job at my house or whatever? It seems. What can you explain the? I'm asking you to stand up for a lot of inferior people here now. Why is it that this industry is so sort of defined almost by, like, we're going to say this and then we're going to do something totally different? Or is it miscommunication? Is it scheduling? Is it software? Is it just bad teams? What do you think that is?
Yeah, that to me, that's we number one, and most importantly, we love that, right?
Yeah, because you do a good job.
Show
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. And one of our unique differentiators is building relationships.
Yeah.
So we're all about that. And I've never understood that. It's like one of the most common things I hear is, wow, you showed up, or you returned my call. And it's like, well, why wouldn't we? Right. And I honestly it's got to be, to me, I call them trunk slammers, right? They're just out there, going from job to job to job. They've overbooked themselves, and they're trying to do the important many, and they're not focusing on the significant few. So years ago, I remember, man, my pile of sales that I would go on was ginormous, from the floor to the ceiling, and my close ratio was like 10%. And I'm going, I can't sustain this. I got to go see 20 people to get 2 jobs. This is crazy. So learning to say no more too, right? My philosophy was to say yes to get to 1 million, and then to get to 2 million, you got to start saying no a lot.
Yeah,
right?
that's a good way to be.
So I think that's the only thing I can think of really, is like they just don't know how to say no. Like they don't want to turn anything down, but know what your sweet spot is, know what you're good at, and own it. Like most people call us a one-trick pony. We're in the landscape industry and we have a hardscape focus. And my philosophy has always been, be the very best at what you're best at, and go get it, and just go get it. And I think too many people try to be everything to everyone
Yeah.
instead of, everything to someone.
I appreciate you taking going up on the cross for us here today, because I knew I was putting you in a tough situation for an entire industry. And something told me that it wasn't going to be something you guys were guilty of. But I would maybe just add as my 2 cents that I think that there's a somewhat low barrier to entry. You find yourself on a job and then you're like, oh shit, I can afford to go buy a truck and some equipment. And I think a lot of folks, just like how salesmen don't make good sales managers, I think a lot of people that are on the ground don't make good foremen or entrepreneurs, right? And so because of that, it's certainly not the thing that allows you to rough out a building in one day as a plumber is not the same thing that allows you to schedule 20 people to rough out 20 buildings in one day as a plumber. So I think I have a ton of empathy for you in this moment, even answering that question, because I'm sure there's a lot of people hearing this right now that have like a half done kitchen and like, just a couple of pipes sticking out where their shower should be, that are like, yeah, I got to talk to this Matt guy about these assholes over here. So listen, Matt, there's 2 questions that I ask every single guest that come on the show, and I'd like to ask you those 2 questions now. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, let's do it. Question number 1, if you had access to unlimited financial capital, how would you profitably grow your current business?
So back in the day, I guess when I first started, and I think this is another Michael Gerber thing, actually, right? Worst thing that guys do typically, or gals, when you start something up, you try to figure it all out, right? And that was probably the worst thing I did. I learned everything there is to know about my business, the certifications, the studying, all of that, which I would never get rid of. But man, had I never done that, what would I have had to do? I would have had to trust it in others, right? So if I had that unlimited capital, I'd have one heck of a fleet, man, I'll tell you that. But more importantly, I'd have a lot of who's around here that know how to take care of the how.
I can tell you've read Who Not How. That's twice you've said
Oh,
that now.
I love that book. I
It's a
tell
great
you,
book. It's a
it's
great book.
one of my favorite books of late.
Yeah.
And yeah, you got me.
Yeah. And the funny thing, since I'm sure you know this, but the listener might not, the guy who wrote that book didn't write that book. It was his student, right?
Right?
Which is
Yeah.
there's 2 perfect moments in books that I've read this year. One of them, this was last year that I read that book, but was when he said, yeah, actually, I didn't write the book. This guy wrote the book for me and he just interviewed me and put it together. And then the second
Yeah.
is in Essentialism. It's the guy Greg McCown who wrote Essentialism, which is all about like living simply and only staying focused on those very important things. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. But he, in that book, for the foreword, goes, I reached out to this, I can't even think of the guy's name. It's an unusual name to pronounce, but it's the guy who wrote Flow. He goes, I reached out to him because he really gets essentialism. And his response was, I cannot write your foreword because it is not essential to my task that I do. And so it was just it made the book for me. Both of those moments kind
Yeah.
of made the book. It was like, oh, you
Right.
really are who you said you are. And it just makes it so much more powerful. So great answer. The second question, Matt, is if you had to give it all up and start something totally new that you've never tried before, what do you think that might be?
Well, if I was going to please my wife, I'd say open a smoothie stand, but
Yeah.
I don't think that would be it. Wow, that's a good question. You know, I don't know what it's always been, and maybe just because of working with people the way I have with all the people in business and even whatever clients, internal, external clients, right? Something psychology, maybe something along
Yeah.
those lines. I am really intrigued by that and trying to uncover, like, what are you thinking, how are you thinking, why did you think that? That's very intriguing to me, so I would definitely go down that road, I believe.
Yeah, that's great. Well, not for nothing. Without a psychology degree, you can have a podcast. And I think if you like to listen and hear about people's stories and dissect what they're thinking, it's a great medium for it. And I'd be happy to help you with that if you ever need.
Yeah, man. You do a
Listen,
great job.
thanks, man. I just enjoyed talking to you. You're making it easy today. So Matt, the listeners that are still sticking around, how can they find you? What any last thoughts before we leave folks for the day?
Well, it's easy to find us, deckerscape.com. It's the best way to find us. And make memories, right? Creating lifestyles and making memories. Let's blow out that backyard and make that staycation.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt Caruso, thank you so much for coming out. The link to contact Matt, if you live in, I believe you're in Michigan, right? If you're in Michigan, we'll have the link in the show notes. But otherwise, if you enjoyed this message, if you identified with what Matt said, we'll have a way to contact him in the notes below, so you can reach out and send him a nice note. Thank you so much, Matt, for coming on. And until next time, have a great day.
Awesome, man. My pleasure. Thank you, Jason.
Of course.